And so right there, it's like, man, it's easy to get stuck in the loop of worry. It's easy to get those things. We can't really change the worry. It's what I like to call it in the recovery addiction space is, man, quit future tripping. We really want to encourage that and think about those things and think about the positive things. There's a lot of things to be joyful for. The fact that I'm breathing today, that I'm awake, that I'm alive.
Yes.
So those are good things.
Practicing gratitude. Yes, definitely.
Yes. Hello, Shannon.
Chico.
I am going to work on not breathing heavy today.
Okay, I know, because it was pointed out. Well, in chewing ice, you have a bad habit of doing things that are crunchy and loud. Yes.
Essentia today. Even though they
Yes.
don't sponsor
No
us,
ice.
we would love it if they did sponsor us. So I'm going to
Well,
do no ice today.
okay. So that's perfect.
You like that?
And we're coming off of 4 snow days. Is that right? 4.
Well, we don't have
Well,
kids.
we
4
don't have
snow
kids.
days of
I just
no
mean,
school with
4 days of no school, but 6
6
days of
days.
ice and kind of no road usage and thick. And
Thick ice.
of course, it was snowmageddon across the country, I think. And so everybody's probably a little wound up right now and cabin claustrophobic and cabin fever and all the things. So anyway,
Yeah, so this is, January 30th that we're actually doing this episode. So you might not hear it till the mid-February region, but we put some thought into this episode and are looking forward
well, we
to
started
unpacking some things.
yeah, we started thinking about it when we shared a reel with our son about, on Instagram. And I think they kind of roll their eyes when we share reels with them because they think we're just so affected by social media more so than even they are. But there was a study, the reel was about a study in Finland about teaching kids how to deal with worry, or a synonym for worry is anxiety. And so after we showed it to our son to say, do you think that this would be a worthwhile exercise for kids to do to avoid some worry and anxiety? And his first comment, I don't know if you remember this, but he kind of looked at it and then he looked up and he goes, is this really even a story? Do they really even do this in Finland? And I was like, well, that doesn't really matter because it's not about the study. It's about just the process that they're talking about, which we'll talk about. And would that help? And he was like, well, in theory, I could see it helping, but also,
Once again,
once
is it a
again,
real
is it
study?
real, or is this just AI, or is this just a made up thing that they're saying that Finnish
And
people do?
that might be an episode that we do. I mean, there is so much. Our boys are the Gen Zers, 22, 26-year-olds, millennials and Gen Zers are very skeptical, which is good.
Well, yeah, and I'm just reiterating the fact that our whole podcast is based on our, education, our experience, our opinions, all of those things. It's not like I said, if we talk about this on the podcast, worry and anxiety and in kids and in adults and everything else, we're really kind of speaking from our experience and our opinions, and we aren't, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So anyway, so
So,
I just preface it with that I said that's not really the point.
but today we are going to discuss a little bit of that. What we read, about what happens in Finland. We're going to discuss. Hopefully, there's going to be some takeaways on for you to pause and go, hey, where is anxiety? Where is worry in my life personally? Where is anxiety and worry in other people's lives in your own experience? And so in the background, you're hearing our damn dog. And so I don't know if we
Oh,
can.
well, there are a lot of deliveries being made now because they've been shut down for 5 days or so, and so, anyway, yes, you might hear some barking, but he's just welcoming the delivery people, but and not to get what we're talking about today is not to get caught up in whether or not they really do this stuff in Finland. Try to stick with the point of the whole thing. We're gonna talk about worry and anxiety and regulation and things like that, right?
So let's get started. Why don't you break down what the study said in Finland?
Okay, so the study said in Finland that parents would have like a worry journal or notebook for their children when they were of age to write and do all that kind of keep a journal. And every night before bed, they would take however long, like 15 minutes, and write down things that had caused them worry that day and acknowledge it. And really it was a way of purging the worry. So you're putting it out there saying, it really worried me today walking into school because there was ice or whatever. I mean, I don't know. But you would purge your worries for the day in a journaling exercise and then let it go, I guess, right?
Yeah, what
And then
what basically it was saying
I
is,
need I need to
they
look back.
encouraged they need, look back while I do this. They encouraged their kids 30 minutes before they went to bed to spend 15 minutes writing down all their worry or anxiety that they were having that day, and then the next 15 minutes to spend before they went to bed going, okay, I can bring that worry back up tomorrow when I get awake, but I'm going to focus on the positive things today. And that made me think a lot about Philippians 4:8, when Paul says, finally, brothers, whatever is true, whatever is honorable, whatever is just, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is commendable, if there is any excellence, if there's anything worthy of praise, think about these things. When you think about positive things before you go to bed, is what these Finnish
Well,
parents were
here's what it
doing.
says because I pulled it up, and it says a Finnish psychologist explained it like this: we don't suppress anxiety, we give it a container. The child's brain learns that worry has a time and a place, and bedtime isn't it. By age 12, most kids don't even need the notebook anymore. They've internalized the boundary. The shift happens because the brain stops treating every worry as an emergency. It's not, don't think about it, it's, you'll think about it, just not now. That small delay breaks the anxiety loop. The child sleeps, the worry loses its grip, and over time, most of those fears never even make it back to the page. Now, I can see where our son would see some flaws in that because that's like telling someone that's depressed not to be depressed, telling someone that's anxious not to be anxious. There's a little bit of a,
We don't know the whole study. We haven't unpacked it.
right.
What is
And
this
there,
psychologist saying? I mean,
right.
there's a lot
And
there.
to tell kids to just write down what they're worried about, close the book, and then go to sleep. That's kind of, I can see yeah, we don't know the whole thing, but
But I like what it said when you read it. It said there's a container, there's a place for it. We're not telling people not to have worry, not to have anxiety. Let's find that space. Let's get that container. Where does it go? You don't need to wear it and it be everywhere.
instead of like when we were growing up, there wasn't a container for worry or anxiety. It was, what do you have to be anxious about? What do you have to worry about? What are you worried about? Why are you worried about that? Don't worry about that. You don't need to worry about that. That's not of your worry. That's not of your business. That's not, why are you worried about that? That's not going to happen. Aliens aren't going to abduct you in the night. Why are you worried about that? You know
Well, growing up, I mean, you just kind of triggered or activated something in me.
oops, sorry.
Uh, no, that's good. It was
Mhm.
like I was told growing up in San Antonio, there was 5 military bases there. And when we were kids, growing up in the 70s and 80s, nuclear war was ever present. I mean, we even had nuclear war drills, which made no
Bomb
sense.
drills, right?
Bomb
Like, we're gonna
drills. Yeah.
survive.
Yeah. It's like get
Yeah.
under your desk. And we're
Yes.
talking about a nuclear warhead. It's like
Right.
that I remember being a kid, in the late 70s, maybe even early 80s, of being afraid that, nuclear war was gonna wipe us out.
Yes.
And
Right.
and my parents go, "You don't need to worry about that because if it hits us, it will. We're all dead. There's no time to worry."
Right, but people were building bomb
Yes.
shelters and
I
everything in
mean,
their
it's just
homes,
but they were
so
telling me, "Don't worry."
yeah, don't
And
worry.
so I like what we read and we unpacked and we did a little more research about it is like that this
Well,
podcast is about our opinions and our experiences and our personal experiences growing up working with people, on a constant level. We seeing our kids is like, man, telling someone else not to worry instead of, hey, where does that worry go? Let's put it into the container. There might be a time and place or that anxiety to unpack that. But what is happening right now? Are you going to get anything out of it?
and having them express it. It's an acknowledgement and it's an awareness and allowing that expression to be had to say, I'm worried about a nuclear bomb, and everyone around me seems to act like it's no big deal. They're allowed to express their worry without judgment or without being told the counter to their worry of don't worry. It's putting it out there in a container so that you can actually express it,
Yes. And so
right?
that's why I read Philippians 4:8, because I like 4, 6, and 7 right before. It's, whatever is worthy, whatever is just, whatever, think about those things. That's 4:8, you know. But 4, 6, and 7 it says, do not be anxious about anything, but in everything, through prayer and petition with thanksgiving. So you are going to be anxious. Present those things to God,
Right.
and the peace of
And take your
God.
thoughts captive and all of those things. You need to come closer to your microphone, I think.
Yes. And,
And
and
stay.
when you
Don't back up like that. So go ahead.
yes. And so when you do those things, present those, and the peace of God, which transcends all understanding, will guard your hearts and your minds. When you take it to God, there's a good container. If you struggle with a relationship with God, write what the Finnish people are doing is writing it on paper. It takes away the power and what they're saying. By the age of 12, they're not even putting it on paper anymore in their little journal.
Right.
They've realized that this
It's
worry is
letting
a
go.
yes.
We don't know that this is it definitely is not presented as a biblical study, but it's certainly a biblical principle to cast your anxieties and worries on the Lord and, kind of let go and let God and all that kind of stuff. And so that's an exercise in this is that the journaling and all that stuff. And I think we know the benefits of journaling and
Finding that container.
right to help regulation and all that kind of stuff. And so but I think that a little bit that's missing from our generation, because we were raised by the boomers, essentially, and because we're Gen X. And so I think that what they're discovering now, this is science. So for my son, if he's listening, this is science that you can actually change your DNA and pass it on to your kids. Anxiety can raise cortisol levels and things like that. And it doesn't change
Wait,
the
can I
what?
ask you a question?
Yeah. Hmm.
Because I know you have that research right there in front of you.
Well, I don't, but
Uh,
I'll pull it up. But
yeah. pull it up because I don't know if that's it, if it actually changes
Okay,
your DNA code,
it
but
doesn't.
it changes what's going on. So let's make
Right.
sure we're quoting that correctly.
I know. I was gonna get there.
Okay.
It says it can alter the structure of
Yes.
DNA via
What can alter the structure? Let's break
oh,
that down.
chronic anxiety
Okay, chronic anxiety is what,
or worry.
and what's that term that it says?
Epigenetics.
Epigenetics. It's like a constant worry, a constant anxiety can
Well, it says, let
change.
me finish reading this.
Okay.
Okay. So it can alter chronic anxiety, I guess, or worry, can alter the structure of DNA via epigenetics, changing how genes are expressed without altering the underlying genetic code. Stressors increase cortisol, leading to chemical modifications like DNA methylation, which affects genes related to stress response, brain development, and anxiety. These changes can persist through cell division, affect future generations, and potentially be reversed with therapy or lifestyle changes.
And so if you pause for a second, Shannon, when you look at childhood development and stuff like that, they did a study, and you know me, and we can break it down another time, but Romanian orphanage kids,
Yes.
that were just put in orphanages. Their parents might have still been alive, but they couldn't support them back in the late 80s, early 90s.
And you
And so the
went to a Romanian orphanage in
orphanage, yes.
Romania and worked,
And so if you
on a
look at
yes, so
Piaget and Erickson, Piaget was, childhood development, the psychologist. Erickson, had the 8 stages of development. And when you're talking about that epigenetics, that can go right back to the Romanian orphanage where these kids were just left untouched, cared for, and their bodies actually changed. Their DNA didn't change, the coding, but the bodies actually changed and became what do you call it, not catatonic, but they became handicapped in several ways. But then when people came in and actually started interacting with these little kids, that the change occurred for good. They became alive. They became
regenerate,
yes.
regenerative. There's
And
a
so you don't have to
deep
be stuck there.
right, right.
It's like, man, you and I both like the Enneagram and some of those other personality tests. The one thing, I'm an 8 on the Enneagram, you're a 2 on the Enneagram, but that doesn't define us. Right now, it's like all of a sudden, if you're a 6 and you worry, all of a sudden you might take on that. Well, that's just who I am. No, you don't have to worry.
Well, it can become an excuse of why you worry so much. Well, that's just the 6 in me, and I just worry and, whatever, but, and I do that with I'm a 2, and you can do it with the help with codependency. I mean, it can look like help, but it can be codependency. And so, that
That's just the
lives
2 in me, that I'm just the helper. And so that's the same thing what we're trying to say here today is, worry when it overwhelms you, and we're trying to really unpack today on this episode what purging anxiety, how might we do that? And one of those tools how we might do that is like the journal that these kids did in Finland and stuff like that, and begin to do that. But a couple of those things, that's is the journaling.
and when you're talking about journaling, we're talking about regulating. That can be good because to talk about because I think my parents' generation, well, the boomers, are very anxious. They weren't taught how to purge the worry and anxiety, contain it, and regulate. And therefore, we have absorbed that. And I mean, I've always said I feel like it's a part of my DNA, just anxiety and worry. And so I've done a lot of work around that. And I think that if we can have an awareness ourselves of our anxiety and worry, then we can regulate better and model that. We haven't had it modeled for us, but we can model that for the next generation by being aware of it and owning it and trying to reverse it like it says
Well,
you can
and
do. But
I think about some of the things, I've worked with a lot of people over the last 30 years. You have too. We've led groups, I've had treatment programs, we've had staff, all that stuff, and we see that. In a previous episode, we talked about being driven by fear, which is anxiety or worry. I gave the example of when you're driven by fear, it's like getting arrested, being put in a squad car and going somewhere you don't want to go. And so you and I, doing our own work, have owned up to how both of us have been raised with fear in our lives, and we've taken accountability with both our boys that we're taking that back. We aren't putting fear on them anymore. That's doing our own work. When you talk about regulating, it's like, okay, recognizing, for me, fear of finances, fear of that economic insecurity is like I have put some of that on our kids. And in the last several years, there's been this big freedom shift there. And I think our boys have known that, but we've also owned it. And we've said, hey, we are taking that back. We aren't putting that fear on y'all anymore, and we aren't living in fear in that way.
well, and I think when we acknowledge some of our worries and anxiety and put it in a container and have it have a place, then I think things start to make sense to them too, to our children when we say, "Hey, this was something that we were anxious about and worried about that maybe we shouldn't have been." And all of a sudden I think they're like, "Oh, it all makes sense now." When you talk about money and things like that, the fear of money or lack of thereof or whatever, they have always been. I mean, Travis, when he was 10 years old, went to New York with your parents and they stayed in a lovely hotel, kind of a, what do you call it,
Boutique,
like
a boutique
boutique private club kind of
hotel.
boutique hotel. And he put every time they left in the morning, Travis would put the do not disturb sign on the outside of the door. And your dad came home at one point and said, "Why aren't they," called the front desk or whatever and said, "Why aren't they cleaning our room?" And they said, "Oh, sorry, sir, you've had the do not disturb sign on." And he was like, "Travis, did you put the do not disturb sign on?" And he goes, "Yeah." And he said, "Why?" And he said, "Well, I didn't want you to spend any more money," because he was already treating him to everything in New York. And he was like, grandson, it's free. That's part of the service, like that they come in and clean the room. But we did that to our kids because a 10-year-old shouldn't be worried about things like that
Hmm.
when it's not even a real worry. Does
And
that
so
make sense?
that's why we're talking about this. We're talking about it from our own experience. We're talking about it, from working with other families, being observant and seeing how, as parents, how we put that worry on. So some of the things that I do believe, yes, our parents put worry on us, and it's a worry generation we talk about with the baby boomers and even the ones before that. But there were some gifts. I can't imagine if my parents had the access that we have from phones and stuff like that by, you know, E360 or whatever, and find my friends and tracking your
Wait,
kids all the time.
what is the
Live,
360?
live,
Lives.
live
Live
360.
360. 360.
Yeah.
Yeah, we haven't used it, but anyway.
But having all that stuff there, it's like I think about it with us. We talked about it in previous podcast. Uh, what you called it something. parenting by mistake or something like
Yes,
that.
yes. Parenting, accidental parenting is what I call it.
Accidental parenting.
Accidental parenting.
So some
Yep.
of it was I'm hard headed, and neither one of our boys got cell phones until going into the summer going into their freshman year of high school.
Now, and I have to say, I think you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that decision was made mainly because neither of us had phones until I was
30.
30.
No,
I think,
you were 29. I was 30.
I don't know. I think we were both 30 in our 30s, I was going to say, because they weren't really around. And so that's when we first got cell phones. And then there was, I think you may have made that decision. You can admit it now or not, but out of fear of what that technology was going to mean. I mean, I'm not saying if you would have recognized that fear, whatever. I think you were acting
Well,
like you were stubborn,
I'm
and it was because of
I was stubborn, but I'm interested. Let's unpack that. You think it was fear on my part of our kids being exposed to such great technology from like an
yes,
iPhone and stuff like that?
yes,
I think yes. And what we like to say is not all fear's bad. But
right.
I was
Was
fearful.
that what it was?
I think there
I
was
can't even remember why you put your foot down, but you all of a sudden just made a bold statement of my kid isn't going to get a phone until he's 15. And you
yes.
just
And
made that
so
statement and then you couldn't back away from it. The closer he got to 15
they
and the
kept
more
working us.
he came to us in 8th grade and said shortly before he turned 15 and said, I'm literally the only one at my school, and it was over 50% lower economic,
Socioeconomic income.
socioeconomic, whatever income school. And he said, I'm literally the only one in my school that does not have a phone. He said, so you can't use like money. Like he was like, you're out of excuses.
Yeah, and know what? And I never used the
But
excuse of money, but
no, I know,
I
but he
did
was,
become stubborn. You're correct, and I did, stand firm with that. And I think yes, there was probably a large amount of fear about the access to the internet, to pornography, to all that kind of the dark web. But a lot of it had to do with meeting with people, and I had several clients that got on the dark web that whatever it was called Silkworth or whatever, and buying drugs and all sorts of stuff. And I had all these different clients, and then I had
before
gas and
Snapchat was the drug
yes,
dealer of
yes,
choice.
and then when phones got introduced, when we had Gaston House and just saw the Tinder and the hookups and
Yeah.
all that stuff, and
No, I get it. But and
that was the
our
big
kids
driver.
were thankful after the fact. I mean, when you're a kid,
But
you're gonna,
pause for a second.
yeah.
Here is when we were growing up, we were told if we were in middle school or even high school, hey, call and check in. And we'd go to a payphone or if
Yes,
we were
right.
at someone's house, and we had to find that. We did that same thing with our boys. Hey, call to check in. And all of a sudden we'd get these random numbers, and we're going, oh, it's one of their friends' phone. And so we started just saving their friend's phone, oh, it's Delauder, or it's, Hayden, or it's whoever, Oscar. We started saving all those numbers because they would call from there. But they were getting this pressure from their friends to get a phone. Quit using my phone. You need to talk your parents into
Oh,
it.
right.
But here's the deal, Shannon. We were getting pressure from our friends that we were being too harsh. Man, why are you doing that? It was crazy. They were teasing us and giving us a hard time. But I can think of several friends. I'm not going to name them because they might listen to this, but they were shaming us for making that decision.
Well, right, and they were like, "It's
In a
safety."
joking way.
It was like they were like, "It's a safety concern." I mean, do you not, care about your kids' safety and being able to get in touch with you? And what if and I have
But
many.
right there,
I
But
never
right there,
lost them. I never didn't know where
no,
they were, but anyway. Yeah.
but right there, that's going back to us as parents knowing how to regulate. Our parents didn't know how to regulate. So how are we as Gen Xers in our 50s, and now, Gen Xers are up
They're in
to
their
60 and
40s too.
yeah, they're from, 40, they're from 61 to 45.
Yeah.
And so it's like there's this whole generation of us that our parents didn't know how to regulate. And so now we regulate. Then we were given these damn things in 2007. The iPhone came out, and all of a sudden our kids are starting to grow up, and we have
And
all this access. And I
well, and
I
we're
think about
also in
that.
that generation that, there was a lot our parents didn't worry about, which is awesome. I mean, there is a lot to be said about they would let us out the door in the morning and say, come home before dark. Like that was our signal to come home. And I don't think they knew what we were doing in between those times. And it's like you pointed out, have you pointed out on a podcast or we were just talking about recently the PSA that would come on the TV every night at 10 o'clock. It's 10 o'clock. Do you know where your kids are? But the worry was introduced when the phones were introduced because we had to cut. We were like, all of a sudden, we were like, surely this is something we should be really worried about. That's what I was pointing out about your decision. I think you were ahead of your time thinking, I I mean, it turns out we should be worried about the phones. I mean, and regulating them and now it's coming before Congress and the Senate and everything else. I mean, they're about to ban
Pass a
this
lot
stuff.
of
They're about to pass a lot of laws for
as it
teenagers
relates
and
to social media and all
yes.
sorts of stuff.
So
And so,
we know
yeah,
that it's a problem, but you were kind of ahead of your time. I think your nervous system, I think our nervous systems can house anxiety and like we know when our antenna's going up and because of your work, like you said with young people and everything else, your antenna was going up as the phones were coming out. Your antennas were going up saying, "I know I need to be worried about this. I'm not exactly sure why or what, but I'm going to stick to my guns and be worried about it because and thank goodness you were. That's why we call it accidental parenting because your antennas were up, you were worried about it, and that is a good thing. But that's what I
I
mean. That's
remember.
what we mean by having an awareness to regulate is that certain events, and just let me finish this and then you can go, but certain events in our lives can, I guess, trigger or activate our nervous system. And sometimes we don't even know it's times of year. Maybe if we've had loss or we've had traumatic events, things like that. I can speak of own traumatic events and times of year that things bring up for me and it's literally it's like in my DNA now. It's like I get that tingle, that rapid heart rate and sometimes I'm like, "Wait, why?" And that's why a worry container could be good because if I can recognize, "Oh, it's that time of year and I had this happen that time of year and it's like this it's worry and anxiety that's coming up for me. So I need to go ahead and acknowledge it, have awareness and put it in a container." And what are you doing?
I'm just grabbing something
Oh
that I
gosh.
just got. Okay, and you
Oh, okay.
you can't
Okay.
you can't hear me, but I'm gonna
I
describe
can
it real
hear
quick.
you now. Okay.
Okay, it's a little
We can see
box,
him now. Okay.
and so this box, it's just magnet. But this is where I love it. On site gave it to me, and it's like, hey, this is where ready for a real break.
On the inside it
On that,
says,
ready
"Ready
for
for
a
a real
real
break."
break. And what you do is
Does it
put
say
your
REAL
it
or
says
REEL?
it says ready for an REAL.
Okay, a
Real.
real break. Yeah.
A real
I just
break
wondered
is
if it was
put your
speaking to
phone
something.
in, and I go,
Yes.
man, this is genius.
Yes.
When you can take a break from from your devices, that we know chemically that the worry, the anxiety goes down. That's why you're seeing stuff go in front of all the social media CEOs and owners are going in front of House and Senate judiciary or committees, and not necessarily judiciary, but they're going in front of committees to talk about the effects. There's all these lawsuits now about the
Yes.
effects that social media and smartphones and all that have on you. And so what we're talking about is how as parents, how do we regulate? I think some of it is for us when we were put outside, we didn't have this. We had to go meet people. We had to learn how to regulate
And
ourselves. So
yes.
there was some very positive stuff. Yes, our parents didn't know how to
Well,
regulate.
we're resourceful. We're more resourceful and independent. Although now that's switching because you can use AI or Google or anything like that to be like we had to really like grassroots resourcefulness. So our regulation looks different than the next generation's regulation. Does that make sense?
Yes, but
And so
so
we have, but we haven't, we were introduced later in life to the devices. And so I think it crept up on us. Like, so that's
but
why on
pause.
site
But
sent,
pause.
okay.
Okay. And so for us, talking about Gen Xers and those kind of things is there was where I grew up in San Antonio, you would meet it, when you were in high school or when we were riding our bikes, we had different spots that you would meet your friends, and if your friends got distracted or pulled away from somewhere and you showed up riding your bike or in your car, you didn't have technology to find out
Right.
where they were like you can on Snapchat, like you can on Find My Friend. You might be driving around all night and you had to regulate through listening to music, not scrolling on the phone. Or, when you didn't have a car and we were riding our bikes, we regulated by, okay, hey, I'm going to go somewhere else. And we would get this physical exercise and we would, just randomly show up and do things.
Well,
And so that,
you didn't even know what to worry about,
yes.
because you didn't know what anybody was doing. I mean, you didn't know what to worry about. I mean, or whatever in those
And
circumstances.
so,
But
some of those things that our parents, had to be reminded every night, hey, it's 10 o'clock. Hey, you have kids because we were expected to be outside. We were expected in a way that was giving us regulation tools, to do grounding exercises. I mean, I didn't wear tennis shoes. I didn't wear flip-flops. I went around barefooted all the time. That's regulating, grounding yourself. Those kind of things. And so now we've kind of lost that. And so what we're encouraging people to do is get back to how do you regulate? How do you do some grounding? How do you first identify what's going on, investigate, and then regulate? And so I like what that Finnish, quote unquote, I'm going to say quote
study,
unquote
yeah.
study said is have a container, get a journal. If you not just if you're a kid, but if you're an adult, model for your kids how to, you know, identify, investigate, and then regulate the emotions, especially the emotions of fear and worry and anxiety, which are all kind of the same.
Well, and I think we can jump into fix it mode too when a loved one is feeling it can be kids or it can be a spouse or parents or whatever. When anyone that you love is experiencing distress or worry, you can try to fix it and, squelch that worry and everything else. But really, we need to learn how to self contain, put it in a container. That's why I think that's why the study, yes, put it in that. But I mean, it's not just about putting your cell phone in a box and taking a break from it, although that is the catalyst to real regulation and healing. You can't, unless you're listening to a meditation app on your phone and not getting distracted, then you can't really regulate with your phone. But my whole point is
And
that
and think
it's
about when we
important
when
for
we were
our
doing this episode, I got distracted, and I'm not even in the same room with you by hearing the dings pop up on your computer.
I know, and that's
And
the dumb part of
I know,
technology is
I
that
knew that it was text messages, and I'm going,
yeah, but I
and I
don't
know she's not engaging in it. It's just me. I'm going, well, who's texting her right now? And
I
that's,
know.
and I
I
don't
know.
care who's texting you, but that's where it goes. It's like we can get wrapped up. I was getting, distracted. I don't know if it was worry, but those kind of things. I was also thinking about this, and I shared this with you, Shannon. I have this AA meeting in our backyard every Sunday night. And a couple Sundays ago, there's 15 guys. And what I don't feel like an old timer in AA, but I'm an old timer in AA. I'm 36 years sober.
You're kind of an old timer in life, actually.
I am
That
kind of an
it's
old
okay.
timer in
It's
life.
okay.
And so
It's all right. It's all right.
as the old timer, I was sitting there, and the meeting was about worldly claimers, what gets in our way of our recovery. And there were several young guys in their 20s and maybe even in their early 30s. And they were talking about, some normal worldly claimers, but they were also talking about just the distractions of social media, their phone, all that kind of stuff. And they're, 6 months, a year, 2 or 3 years sober. And I came back in and I shared with you, I go, I didn't get a cell phone until I was 9 years sober. I didn't have those distractions,
Right.
to have that social interaction, to, call my sponsor on the phone, leave him a message.
A real community, not an
Yes.
online community,
Yes.
you know.
And so I would get in that place of I am grateful. I really came back and go, I was grateful that I didn't have those things. When we started Gaston House, there were, some people had cell phones, but really I would have these guys after their first month to go out and look for jobs, and we would give them quarters to call and check in
Right.
from using the payphone, and they had to do it
Yes.
or there were consequences.
I don't know when payphones kind of actually went away officially. I'll have to look that up,
Yes,
but
but
yeah, that's weird.
but for those first 3, 4, 5 years, man, we had struggles in that program, but there wasn't the distractions. And then when cell phones just became part of Gaston House, it's like we still took them away, and they had to earn that right. And part of earning that right was building a foundation of recovery where they're all right with themselves. And then all of a sudden, when we gave them their cell phones, there became this dysregulation. They were downloading Tinder, they were, hooking up, they were looking at porn. I mean, just all the stuff that got them distracted from their recovery.
Yeah. Yeah, I understand. And I think when the discussion also can move from, phone bad, phone evil, phone, negative or whatever to phones just new and it's innovative and it's forward and it's time saver, all those things.
And it's not, and that's going back to you and I's whole premise is we don't look at things as good, bad, right, wrong. We're really going, hey, what's healthy and what's unhealthy?
Right. And
And
it's
so
just
we
asking for a little grace from, you know, younger people that we have to catch up, first of all. We have to have some grace for our parents who just have no, I mean, and I feel terrible for that generation with the scams that are coming
but
around
there's
via
some real positive
email and all
stuff.
that
There's
stuff.
real positive stuff with, the baby boomers. You're seeing, their kids, are grown and they have kids. And so they're grandparents, and, some of them are widowed. Some of them, are married, but they're reconnecting. They're the biggest ones on like Facebook and stuff like that. And so they're building a community. They've lost this community. They're not raising kids anymore. Their friends, the neighborhoods, that your parents lived in their house for 55 years. And so leaving that neighborhood and stuff like that, a lot of these people can do some reconnecting. So it's not all bad.
Well,
But when
no, and
it
they're able to
becomes their whole
FaceTime
life,
it,
yes.
yeah, and,
But when they're just scrolling or doom
I know,
scrolling
and
or doing
I
that
wasn't trying to, I think we're kind of veering into another
topic.
topic area, and I wasn't trying to. What I was just trying to, bring home is that, we can all use regulation. We all have worry and anxiety no matter when we were born on this earth and no matter where we are in the technology stage and everything else. It's not all the phone, is what I'm trying to say, is that everyone has to acknowledge their worry and anxiety because we all have it at different times, different levels, and different capacities. And we need to talk about capacity too, which could be a whole nother topic. So I just think that what we're trying to do is just share our real life kind of experience in our place and time in history and hope that everyone, since there has been science out there that this cortisol and stress levels and everything else can change the way your genetic stuff appears, which could be the uptick in disease these days and things like that, ailments, mental health, even dementia, think brain health, things like that. Obviously, I'm not a doctor and I don't know, and we're wrapping up.
But
I'm just
that's why I
it's not
love.
just the phone, but it's
No,
yeah.
it's not just the phone. But one of the ways to regulate is through, once again, going back to journaling, finding a container, learning how to name it, name what's going on. But then also, I'm just going to do it again. It's like, man, how do we get to that place to really think about whatever's true, whatever's honorable, whatever's just, whatever's pure? Whatever's lovely, whatever's commendable, if there's any excellence, if there's anything worthy of praise, think about those things. If we think about the positive, because it's real easy to think about the worry, to think about
Well,
the
it's
negative.
easily accessible. I mean, I was, and this again will be another topic for another time, but I think my algorithm is messed up right now because of lots of just bad news in the world right now. I mean, loss and yeah, just lots of stuff going on, and I think my algorithm's a little messed up right now, and it's kind of, I am gonna take a little cleanse from my phone next week because it was just getting to me recently. I just realized.
Yeah. And so
Like
we
in the
all have
past
to come
24 hours, I realized that I was like, how do I change my algorithm? I'd rather see like Target sales than what I'm seeing right
on,
now.
yes. And so right there, it's like, man, it's easy to get stuck in the loop of worry. It's
Yeah.
easy to get those things. We can't really change the worry. It's what I like to call it in the recovery addiction space is, man, quit future tripping.
Yeah.
And so
We
it's
talked
like,
about that.
yes. And so we really want to encourage that and think about those things and think about the positive things. There's a lot of things to be joyful for. The fact that I'm breathing today, that I'm awake, that I'm
Yes.
alive. So
Yes.
those are good things. So,
Practicing gratitude. Yes, definitely.
yes. All right. That was
Grateful.
a good one. Thank you,
Okay.
Shannon.
Yes, you're welcome.